If I were to buy a home in 2026, here's exactly what I'd do. Interest rates are high in the sixes, and most buyers are stuck debating, do I wait or buy? But that's the wrong question. The real question is, how do I make this market work for me? Because with the wrong strategy, you could overpay on the same house for the next 30 years. But with the right one, you could be ready to buy no matter what market we're in. And I'm a mortgage expert, and I've helped over 500 families, and I've also bought and sold 15 plus units myself, even with rates being this high. And there are 4 playbooks I'd use if I were buying in 2026, and just one of them can mean the difference between being house poor and financially comfortable in the same exact house. So let's start with getting a buyer's game plan, not just a regular pre-approval. Now, what do I mean by that? So I gotta tell you about how I met my wife. Okay, now stay with me here. I promise it'll all make sense when we connect the dots, okay? So I was coming back from college, and it was like right around that spring break time, and we're coming from Cabo. I was there with my roommate at the time. And of course, we were in college, had no money. And I was like, man, I'm going to take this flight, which is going into LA and then LA to San Diego. So it was like a, 2-hour flight and then, like a 30-minute flight from LA to San Diego. But there was like an 8-hour layover because I wanted to save $20. But then once I landed, another friend was like, hey, I'm in LA. I'm actually driving down because spring break was ending soon to San Diego. I don't know if you want to catch a ride, and we can jam down the 5, right? So I was like, yeah, let's do that. I got into LA, didn't take the layover there, and went over to my friend's house near LMU, or basically another college in LA. And that's actually when I first ran into my wife, our girlfriend at the time. And I was like, wait a minute, you're kind of cool. She was like, you're kind of cool. It didn't really go out like that, but we were, silently kind of, checking each other out. And that's basically how we first met. So the reason why I tell you this is because a lot of people treat buying a house almost a little backwards, where they're like, hey, I'm going to conjure this, crazy spell on December 2nd at 3:20 p.m. with the full moon, and I'm going to find the perfect house or the perfect soulmate, right? And a lot of people don't want to get the right education ahead of time. Therefore, they actually think they need to find the house, then get a pre-approval, when in reality, they should have got a game plan first, and then the pre-approval, and then find the house, right? I'll give you a crazy example. Like, imagine if you told your coworker this exact thing of like, yeah, I'm gonna, on December 2nd at 3:30 p.m., I'm gonna find my perfect soulmate. They're gonna report you to HR and the cops. Like, hey, we got Coda Obsession here. Get Nikki and Barrett here. By the way, if you haven't watched Obsession, really cool movie. But they're gonna be like that. They're gonna be like, that's kind of weird that you're expecting this perfect house to pop up on this perfect exact date at this exact time, right? So don't do that for home buying. So what I always like to say is, the bigger the deal, the longer the runway should be. So please don't fall in the trap that when you find the right house, then you're gonna get the process started. I always recommend get a game plan first, and then the pre-approval, and then find the house. And by the way, a regular pre-approval is like, hey, here's your pre-approval letter. Congratulations, you're pre-approved up to like 500,000. It's literally just that. Like, lenders don't do much aside from just giving you the number and just saying good luck. So buyer's game plan is something that tells you, hey, there are these different strategies that I would recommend to find that comfortable payment, or even if you find a house that's close to your comfortable budget, what are some ways that we can pull that purchase price down or lower the payment even more, things like that. So that way you're well prepared once you actually, get boots on the floor. So the analogy I like to give is almost like a GPS versus speed limit, right? Getting just a regular pre-approval is like just getting a speed limit sign. It just tells you one thing, right? Which is the fastest that you can go, which is, let's just say 500,000, right? For this example. A buyer's game plan is like your GPS. It knows where you are and where you're actually headed to. It picks the route, optimizes it, and gives you the best options or the best path to get there. Okay, so now you got your GPS and you got your destination set up. Now, if you're gonna write an offer on a home, if everyone's zigging, you gotta zag, right? So this next strategy helps you negotiate. So this next one is called MESO, or MESO, multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. So negotiations are not a zero-sum game. You're always gonna have something that is more valuable to you than to others, right? So let's say you offer 500,000 and you're gonna do like a 30-day close, right? So that's like, options number one. Then you have a second one because you're doing multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. Then you're gonna offer, well, what if we do 490,000 with a 14-day close? 2 weeks, you're gonna send the money and things like that. So make sure if you wanted to do something like this, your lender obviously has to be able to close that fast. Most lenders across the nation are usually around that 30-day closing mark. So again, if you can have somebody that can close faster, that might be a competitive advantage. So that's options number 2. Then you have the third option, which is, hey, let's do $500,000, but I also want $10,000 in seller credits to cover my closing costs or part of it. And we can do a few other strategies that I'm talking about later, like a temporary rate buy down, where your interest rate could be 1 or even 2% less for the first 1 to 2 years. And you still offer a 14-day close, right? So what you're doing is multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. And you're basically seeing what is the most valuable thing, for the sellers. Because, sometimes people don't want to show all their cards. The listing agent might not want to, disclose that. But by doing this, you're basically testing the waters out of what they find more valuable. So here's what I like even more, which I would say is a version 2.0 of this, is you can use the same exact script. You can let your agent know, or, basically ask the sellers, right? Is like, hey, can you give me 2 or 3 versions of what this deal might look like so it's a win for you? Then, this is where it gets spicier, says they can give you 2 or 3 versions, A, B, or C, right? Then you grab your favorite part from A, favorite part from B, other favorite part from C, and you make an unspoken version D for Delta, right? Like maybe it's even more seller credits. Maybe it's the sellers pay off your private mortgage insurance, which by the way, if you get a conventional loan, you can do that, by the way. So you don't need to save up for the 20% down. If you're like, I don't want to pay private mortgage insurance, sometimes the sellers can pay for that. Maybe have them pay for the title insurance. What about transfer taxes, home warranty, termite report, and or termite repairs? The world is your oyster when you use MESO. All right, real quick, I know we were just talking about submitting multiple equivalent simultaneous offers, but I also wanted to offer you something that I made for free. It's the Homebuyer Readiness Quiz. There's no credit pull, it takes less than 30 seconds to find out if you're ready. And the good news is if you're not ready, I send you videos so that we can solve that one constraint to be ready. And like I said, it's completely free. Check it out in the link down below, as well as there's also a link right below that one, which if you want more like one-on-one personalized advice, there's a guidance link that you can schedule in. That way we can chat one-on-one and see how it can help. All right, let's go into the next one, which is what I call increment anchoring. So this one's a little spicy, right? So this is a negotiation tactic. Now, technically your real estate agent or your buyer's agent, who's supposed to be really good, right? They're going to be basically doing the same thing, something like this. Now, if you're like, hey, the agent I work with is, maybe a family relative, they just got licensed, they're kind of new, they don't know what's going on. Well, guess what? I'm just literally teaching you the secret sauce here so you can do it yourself or tell them what to do, right? So here's how it works. So let's say the seller is offering, $500,000. We're just gonna roll with the same example here. Now I know some of you watching this are gonna be being like, $500,000 is so expensive. Some of you in California might be like, well, I can't buy anything under $1 million. I'm just using this as an example, okay? So let's say you offer $450,000 and the house has been on the market for like 30, 45 days or even 60 days. The seller counters back at $480,000. They're like, okay, well, we don't want to accept $450. We'll offer $480. Now here's where it gets spicy. So now you counter at $452. So now here's where it gets spicy. Most people would be like, okay, well, split in the middle and I'm going to counter back at $465 instead of accepting $480. But because you're watching this video, you're going to do this increment anchoring and you're going to counter at $452,000. But wait, there's more. Now, if you accept now, you'll also receive 2 ShamWows and 1 used slap chop. Okay, all joking aside, you're not going to get a slap chop or a ShamWow, right? Basically, what you're going back to the actual strategy is basically they came down $20,000, right? $500 to $480. And then you came up $2,000 and you threw in some stuff that you didn't really care about. Not really the slap chop, but maybe you gave them like a free rent back. Maybe they need some time to move out, right? Maybe you wanted to cover some of the transfer taxes, right? Instead of the sellers covering it. Maybe you wanted to cover your home warranty, which is really only $800, like $500 or so. But it signals to them as, okay, well, I'm gonna give you some more, not just dollar-wise. So you're basically signaling to them, hey, I'm gonna adjust my price to offer you a little bit more and give you some more concessions, but not that much. So that's about negotiations. So this next strategy is gonna show you, hey, how can I like increase my income with things that I already do? So here's the idea that I want you to steal. I call it sawdust. So if you're already doing something, how do you make a little money off of the leftovers? I'm not saying like a whole new second job, full-time job. You're not working 2 shifts, not hustling, the nights, the weekends, and, cranking 80-hour work weeks, right? It's just, how do I get money from stuff that I was already doing anyways, or was already going to happen anyways? So think about the concept came from like old sawmills, right? The guy's cutting lumber all day, and there's a pile of sawdust on the floor, and they actually used to just burn and throw it away, right? But then someday someone came up with is like, hey, what if we just take this pile of trash and ask a different question? What if I glue it all together and press it into a board? And then bam, that's how particle board was created. And particle board's that stuff that you get in like the budget-friendly shelves, the TV stands, those IKEA shelves that are so cheap, but very difficult to build.
Many hours later.
And then you finally build it, and you're questioning if you should have even gone to IKEA because you spent 12 hours at the store, you bought some ice cream, some of the food there, and you're walking all over the place, and you're like, man, I just spent a lot of time there. Comment down below if you've done that before. I for sure have done that. But so going back to Sawdust, right? Basically, how can you get more leverage for the things that you're already doing? So here's some ideas, your Sawdust, right? Is maybe you're already, doing something as a hobby and you can sell it on Etsy. Maybe you're like a nerd like me, you have a 3D printer and you want to 3D print stuff and, sell that. You're already printing stuff out because you're like, I like to build stuff, right? Great, let's try that. Or you're already driving around town and you're already gonna go get groceries, so why not just do some Instacart, make some money and pay for your groceries, right? Or maybe you're already, living in a house full of stuff that you don't use, you haven't touched it in like 6 months. Maybe you put it up for consignment or Facebook Marketplace. But if you got Legos, by the way, definitely don't do consignment. I don't know if y'all seen the viral Legos being stolen, like $200,000 worth or whatever. If you haven't, enjoy the rabbit hole I just introduced you to. Watch it after this video. You're gonna go down this rabbit hole. So I'll tell you something that I do for Sawdust, right? Which is right now, I've been getting in more to running. I've been running for like a few years, and I've always been into fitness and things like that, right? So obviously with fitness, you have to pay for supplements, protein, creatine, running shoes, running gear, shorts, singlets, stuff like that, right? So, and guess what? If you're running a lot, then you burn through shoes like all the time. You guys know if you're a runner what I mean. So I was like, okay, so I actually enjoy teaching as well, hence why I actually like making these videos, even at night when my son is down for a little bit during the witching hour. But anyways, how can I combine the two? So it's like, oh, what if I like do a little bit of coaching for people that are, getting newer into the running, game or even the fitness game? Like, how can I go from a couch to a 5K or even 10K? So I can like give some tips like that. And I don't charge anything crazy, like $20, but I give them all the advice, the spreadsheets, the running programs, literally everything that I've done to get the results I have, all for free. So that way they don't get injured, they can go further, be more consistent, they get the shortcuts, all for, a few bucks, right? So I get to use that money for supplements, protein powder, running shoes, and things like that. So that's the concept of Sawdust. I'm already doing something and I already love teaching. How do I gel the two together? All right, we're a few strategies in, and I wanted to talk about the homebuyer readiness quiz that's completely free and there's no credit pull and it gets you ready. Great thing is, like I said, it takes a few seconds. It's in the link down below. And if you aren't ready on a specific section or constraint of the buying process, I give you a specific video. It's usually like 3 to 5 minutes. You solve that constraint and then you can move on to the next step. And like I said, there's no credit pull. It's my free gift to you. Check it out in the link down below. And if you want more like one-on-one custom advice from me personally, there's a guidance link down below where we can schedule in a free guidance call as well. All right, let's get into the last one where we talk about how we can combat higher interest rates right now. So let's talk about the temporary rate buy down. This is my favorite strategy if you can pull it off, okay? So basically you lower your payment the first 1 to 3 years. Usually the most common one is about a 1 year. There's a 2-year option and a 3-year option as well. Now the goal is it is gonna lower your payment the first 1, 2, or even 3 years for whatever option you choose. If you do the 1 year, your interest rate will be 1% less for the first 12 mortgage payments. So let's say you get a 6% interest rate, 1% less is 5%. So obviously that's gonna be really nice, right? And then if you get a 2-year temporary buy down, generally that's gonna be 2% less the first year, so 4%, then 1% less the next year, so 5%, and then 6% for the remainder, right, in this example. And then the 3-year kind of follows the same pattern. Now, the key thing with a temporary buy down, so if some of you watching this, you might have got a temporary buy down, comment, TB down below, or, I got a temporary buy down. If used well, It is really good. You know how Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility? Same exact thing. You do not want to fake like this payment, this lower payment the first year or two is going to be like that forever. And then also max out your budget on the temporary rate buy down and then have no money left over, right? You want to be comfortable with the worst case payment. So just to be clear, if you get a temporary rate buy down, be okay with the worst case payment. It's just a nice bonus for the first 1 to 2 years to be comfortable. You can build up your money that you use for your down payment, build up your reserves, things like that. Or maybe you're going to have a job raise coming up, right? Which is great. So it's a nice little bonus that you're going to get those 3% raises, or maybe it might be a big promotion or something like that, right? So at the end of the day, be comfortable with the worst case payment. And then the other thing is there's also a spectrum you want to solve for, which is how likely is your income going to go up, right? So let's say, on this end, not likely, you're not going to get a raise, or here I work for a union and pretty much guaranteed that I'm going to get these raises every single time, right? That's spectrum number one. The second spectrum is how likely are rates going to go down. If you think rates are never going to go down and they're always going to go up, that's here. And then you're like, okay, well, rates are for sure going to go down. And I know that with 100% certainty. Sometimes you're probably going to be in the middle, right? But if you use that spectrum, you can kind of gauge, is this temporary buy down going to be helpful for me when I'm buying a house in 2026? All right, so those are the strategies that I would use if I was buying a home in 2026, even if it was my first house or if I bought before, right? And as always, I like to make the best education in the mortgage and real estate space. So if you liked it, give it a like, comment, or even subscribe. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Would appreciate you joining the family here. And YouTube is also recommending this video right over here. Give it a click. YouTube's very smart. Check it out, and I'll catch you on the next one.